Hi, you guys. Welcome to today's lesson on equations with fractions. I know that for many of you, fractions are something that you're not happy about when you have to deal with fractions, or maybe when you have fraction answers. I know that fractions are a little bit tricky, and that's okay. It's okay that you don't like fractions. Lots of students don't like fractions, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to see them in math sometimes. Okay, so I want you guys to be able to realize that it's okay to have a fraction answer, or it's okay to have a fraction in your equation. I'm going to show you 8 different problems, and I'm going to do them with you. So make sure you have a piece of paper out and something to write with, and make sure you're following along. This is probably one of the more tricky lessons that we've had. And then after I have done the 8 questions with you, I'm going to give you a few questions to try on your own for your quiz. So with that said, let's go ahead and look at this lesson. Okay, so here we go. Number 1, negative 3 times by 2 minus x plus 5 equals 32. Let's go ahead and solve this equation. By now, you should be able to look at this equation and not be intimidated. It should be easily solved. Remember, whenever you're solving an equation, your first step is to simplify. If there's anything that needs to be simplified, you have to take care of that first. So if we look at this left side of our equation, we can see that we need to simplify. We need to distribute the negative 3 to both sides, to both terms, and then we're going to combine the 5. Okay, so when we distribute the negative 3 times 2, we get negative 6. And then when we do the negative 3 times by a negative x, okay, because there's a minus sign in front of this x, it actually makes it a negative 1x. We don't always write that 1 as a coefficient, but we need to remember that it is there. So negative 3 times negative 1x would be positive 3x. And then we have our plus 5. We're not done simplifying this left side yet. We can combine the negative 6 and the positive 5 and make that negative 1. So 3x, we have a negative 1 equal to 32. Okay, now from there, this is just a two-step equation. We're solving for the x. In order to get the x by itself, there's 2 things we need to get rid of. We need to get rid of this minus 1. We also need to get rid of this multiplication of 3. Okay, so the way that we get rid of a minus 1 is by doing a plus 1. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do the exact same thing to the other side. So we'll get 3 times x equals 33. And then our next step is to get rid of the multiplication of 3 by using division. So we're going to divide by 3 on both sides, and x equals 11. Okay, do you guys want to know something funny? I wrote this question, and I wasn't really paying attention to what I was writing because I just thought I needed an equation that ended up with a fraction answer. So I just put something down for you guys to do. And anyways, it ended up not being a fraction. So that's kind of funny. I tried to give you an equation that would end up being a fraction, and it wasn't. So the answer to that one is x equals 11. That's our solution. And now we're going to look at question number 2. Okay, and question number 2 is in fact an equation with fractions, isn't it? So we have 3 over 2 is equal to x over 4. Now, this is really, really important, so make sure you're paying attention. Anytime you have one fraction equal to another fraction, it has a special name. And it's called a proportion. Okay, so anytime you have one fraction equal to another fraction, we call that a proportion. And in order to solve a proportion, we're going to do something that's called cross multiplying. Okay, and I know that you've probably seen this before, but I'm going to show you how this works. Okay, so make sure that if you have one fraction equal to another fraction, you have to identify that it's a proportion. And then if you know it's a proportion, to solve a proportion, you always cross multiply. So for this question right here, when we have 3 divided by 2 equal to x divided by 4, to cross multiply, the 4 is going to get multiplied by the 3, and the 2 is going to get multiplied by the x. Okay, that's what cross multiply means. So 4 times 3 is 12, equal to 2 times x, which is 2x. Okay, now from there we're solving for the x. Right now we have 12 is equal to 2 times x. So to get rid of the multiplication of 2, we use division. So x equals 6. That would be our solution. And if we plug 6 in for the x, okay, we know that these two fractions are equivalent. If you simplify 6 divided by 4, you get 3 divided by 2. Okay, 2 goes into 6 3 times, 2 goes into 4 twice. So if you were to simplify 6 over 4, you would get 3 over 2. Okay, so these are equivalent fractions. Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, and I just made this one up too. So I hope that it does in fact equal a fraction answer. So let's go ahead and do question number 3 together. Remember that whenever you're solving an equation, you need to simplify first. So we're going to simplify the left side by distributing and combining like terms. Then we're going to simplify the right side by distributing and combining like terms. Then we're going to solve. Okay, so here we go. Because we have a 2 in front of a parenthesis, it needs to get multiplied by both of these terms. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 4 is 8. Then we have a negative 4x and a positive 6. So let's continue simplifying here. 2x and negative 4x are like terms. So they would combine to make a negative 2x. And then 8 and 6 are like terms. So that would be a positive 14 equal to. Now let's go ahead and simplify the right side of our equation. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. And then we have positive 2x. We're not done simplifying the right side yet because 3x and positive 2x can combine to make 5x. Okay, so on the right side we have 5x minus 9. On the left side we have negative 2x plus 14. And we need a little bit more space here. So negative 2x plus 14 equals 5x minus 9. Okay, so here we go. Our equation has the variable on both sides. Our first step is to get these two terms on the same side by either adding 2x to both sides or subtracting 5x from both sides. And I'm going to go ahead and just choose to add 2x to both sides. So then we get 14 equals 7 times x minus 9. And now we just have a two-step equation. And by now these should be super easy for you guys, these two-step equations. So there's two things we have to get rid of in order for the x to be by itself. We have to get rid of the subtract 9. We also have to get rid of the multiplication of 7. So to get rid of the subtract 9, we're going to do plus 9 on both sides. 14 plus 9 is 23 equal to 7 times x. And then to get rid of the multiplication of 7, we use division. Sorry, that's supposed to be a 7, not a 2. Okay, so our answer, or our solution, is 23 over 7. And this is, in fact, a fraction answer. And that's okay. So when we have a solution of x equals 23 over 7, The way that I want you to leave these is as a fraction. If the fraction can be simplified, I want you to simplify it. In this case, there are no numbers that can divide into both 23 and 7 evenly. So 23 over 7 is a simplified fraction. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at number 4. Okay, right away, I want you to notice that you have one fraction equal to another fraction. And remember, anytime that happens, you need to realize that it's a proportion. And to solve a proportion, you're going to cross multiply. Okay, so here we go. To cross multiply, we are going to take the 4. We're going to multiply it by the y. And we are going to take the 6. We're going to multiply it by the 3. So 4 times y looks like this, and 6 times 3 is 18. And because we're solving for the y, we need to get the y by itself by getting rid of the multiplication of 4. So we're going to divide by 4 on both sides. So 1y equals 18 divided by 4. Fraction answer. And remember that whenever we have a fraction answer, I want you to leave it as a fraction. Don't change it to a decimal. But if it can be simplified, you need to simplify it. So when we look at these two numbers right here, 18 and 4, in order to decide if this can be simplified, we need to figure out if there's a number that can divide into both of them evenly. And because both of these are even numbers, we know that 2 can divide into 18 9 times, and 2 can divide into 4 twice. So we would write our solution as 9/2. Okay, you guys, I hope you are realizing how unscary fractions are at this point. Okay, so you've seen some equations where you have a fraction answer. You've seen some equations where you have two fractions equal to each other. We're going to do a few more of these together, and then I'm going to give you a few to do on your own for your quiz. Okay, so this is probably the trickiest one on our example list. We have x divided by 4 minus 5 equals 2x plus 3. I'm going to teach you a trick here. Okay, if you have equations in your fraction, like we do right here, we have this x divided by 4. We can actually eliminate any fractions in our equation if we find a common denominator for all of our terms, and we multiply every term in our equation by that common denominator. Okay, so if we look at the terms x over 4, negative 5, to make that a fraction, we put it over 1. 2 over x, to make that a fraction, we put it over 1. And then 3, to make that a fraction, we put it over 1. So we're looking for a common denominator between 4, 1, and 1. A common denominator is a number that all of these can divide into evenly, and it's the smallest number. So the number 4, that would be our common denominator. So if I multiply x divided by 4, the divided by 4 and the times by 4 is going to cancel, and I'll be left with just an x. Now because I multiplied this term by 4, I've got to multiply all of these terms by 4, because in the beginning we were given an equation where the left side equals the right side. Okay, so to keep those two sides equal, if we do something to one side, we've got to do the same thing to the other side. So we're going to multiply this term by 4. Negative 5 times 4 is negative 20, equal to, we're going to multiply 2x by 4, and that will be 8x. And then we're going to multiply 3 by 4, and that will be 12. And then from there, we're just going to go ahead and solve the equation that we have left. Once the fractions are gone, we just have an equation with the variable on both sides, which you guys know how to solve. So we would minus x from both sides here. So that gives us negative 20 equals 7 times x plus 12. And then this is a simple two-step equation. To get this x right here by itself, we first need to get rid of the plus 12 by doing a minus 12. And remember, whatever you do on one side, you do the same thing to both sides. So that would give us a negative 32 equals 7 times x. And we're running out of space here. So negative 32 equals 7 times x. And then from there, to get rid of the multiplication of 7, we use division. Divide by 7 on both sides. Negative 32 over 7 equals x. That is our answer. Okay, so we've got 3 more, and then I think you guys are ready to do some of these on your own. A really good idea would be for you to pause the video right now. Try this question on your own, and then push play and see if you got it correct. Okay. So our first step here is to simplify the left side by distributing this negative x. So negative 8 times 2x is negative 16x. Negative 8 times 3 is negative 24. Okay, and then we have our negative 4x. So we can still combine some like terms here. We haven't completely simplified the left side yet. A negative 4x, when we combine that with a negative 16x, we get negative 20x. Okay, you guys make sure that as you do these, you are using your calculators. You have to make sure that you get your integer operations correct. Pay attention to all of the details. Okay, now from here, we want to get these two terms on the same side. So we can either add 20x to both sides, or we can add 15x to both sides. Either one of those are going to get these two terms that have the x on the same side. So I'm just going to go ahead and add 20x to both sides, which leaves me with negative 24 equals, if I combine negative 15x and 20x, I get 5x. And then we have plus 7. And then from here, you guys, it's just a simple two-step equation. And I know by now, you guys are able to do awesome on these. And then from there, we would divide by 5 on both sides. So negative 31 divided by 5 equals x. Okay, voila. Okay, 2 more. And then you guys are ready to practice some of these on your own for your quiz. Go ahead and push pause. Do this question on your own and then push play and see if you got it correct. What I want you to notice here is that we have one fraction equal to another fraction. We're being asked to solve for y. So if you look at this equation, you can see that we have more than one variable here, and that's okay. We know how to deal with these. We just finished our transforming formulas lesson. So whenever we have a proportion, we solve the proportion by cross multiplying. So because we have these two fractions equal to each other, we know it's a proportion. So we're going to cross multiply to solve it. 2 times x is 2x equal to 3 times y, which is 3 times y, looks like this. And then we're solving for the y, which means we want to isolate the y. We want to get the y by itself. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in a different color. So we're trying to isolate this y, right? We're solving for the y. So in order for the y to be by itself, we're going to have to get rid of this multiplication of 3. So that's easy. We know how to do that. We divide by 3 on both sides. And our answer, or our solution, is that 2/3 times by x is equal to y. Okay, last one. Okay, you guys, are you still with me? Hopefully you are, and hopefully you've been writing down each of these examples. They will help you on your quiz, and you also need to turn these notes in. So make sure you're writing them down, and we are ready to do the last one. 5 divided by x equals 6 divided by 7. Notice that this is a proportion. Remember, anytime you have two fractions equal to each other, so we have 5 over x as a fraction equal to 6 over 7, that's also a fraction. So we call that a proportion. And to solve a proportion, you would cross multiply. Okay, so 7 times 5 is 35 equal to x times 6, which looks like this, right? 6x. And then if we're solving for the x, we just need to divide both sides by 6. So 35 divided by 6 equals x. There are no numbers that can divide into both 35 and 6 evenly, so we're just going to leave this as an improper fraction. And you guys did it. You did this whole lesson on equations with fractions. So I'm going to give you 3 questions for your quiz questions. At this point, if you want to come into a breakout room and do your quiz up on the board so that I can help you and you can make sure that you do it correctly before you turn it in, I'm super happy to do that. So just raise your hand. Make sure, though, that before you raise your hand, you have these 3 quiz questions written down. Okay, so I'm going to give you the 3 quiz questions. Make sure that you have these 3 quiz questions written down. If you feel like you can do this without going into a breakout room, if you're confident that you've got this and that you're going to get them correct, then go ahead and do these 3 quiz questions and then turn them into the assignment box. Once you have this quiz turned in, if there's no other lessons that you need to catch up on after this, then you are excused. Okay, you guys, so here is your quiz. Remember that if you want to do the quiz with me on the board, go ahead and raise your hand after you have written down these 3 questions, okay? Because you're going to write these questions up on the board and then show me all of your work. So if you want to do that, write down the 3 questions, raise your hand. I'll put you in an individual breakout room and you can do the quiz on the board. Or if you're ready to do this on your own, just go ahead and do this quiz, show all of your work, and then turn both of your notes and also your quiz into the box. And I will see you tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.